The still morning air hangs upon you. The tick of the clock, the old buoy bells sound around you. And in the distance a screen door slams shut, muffled voice speaking, I don't know what. Sleepy heads rise, we open our eyes to the day. And as Graham sweeps the floor, we're out the door, out of her way. We lie on the beach in the cool summer breeze, eating fresh mulberries right from the trees. Card games and water skis, juniper knows. But time swiftly goes by, and before we knew why, our innocent youth fades away. It doesn't take long and our childhood's gone, but the memory remains. On Juniper Knoll, the sun slowly sets in the sea. And as stars fill the skies, we're imagining infinity. The best of friends sharing our wishes and dreams, boasting of futures with outrageous schemes. Life was so simple it seemed, Juniper Knoll. But time swiftly goes by, and before we knew why, our innocent youth faded away. And it didn't take long, now our childhood's gone, but the memory remains of Juniper Knoll, and memories come thicker than air. For on Juniper Knoll, I learned how to love and to share. No matter the distances traveled in years, no matter the struggle, rejections or fears, and no matter how I hold back all the tears, a moment of hope brings me back to Juniper Knoll. Juniper Knoll, Juniper Knoll.
Thank you, Jim. That's so soulful. Show's about love, I can tell that. Welcome to Poetry of Immigrants. It's good to be back with you. Thank you for joining us. We have really a joyful show for you today. And I have my returning guest, Elaine Nadal, to my left. Thanks for coming back, Elaine. Popular demand.
I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. And to her left, Jim Paradis, and he's a local musician with family roots in the area. Maybe some of you recognize his name, see his face, heard him play, but I'm going to follow his music after today in a way that I haven't really been so captivated. I really love the theme, Jim, of the passing of youth into memories, which we all keep, and the love of family. It's very powerful. Thanks. So, we were talking before the show, and he recognized the book, which I use as an intro pretty much every show. It's John O'Donohue, To Bless the Space Between Us. The book's a real blessing. And I'm going to ask him to read the prayer blessing poem. It's really a book of blessings, but they call it a poetry book. Same thing, I think. Watch for the connection between prayer and poetry today. We have many poets offering that connection. On meeting a stranger.
On meeting a stranger, with respect and reverence, that the unknown between us might flower into discovery and lead us beyond the familiar field, blind with the weed of weariness and the old walls of habit.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
If we can just shed some of the old walls of habit. We have another special invocation, and Mother Teresa made an appearance on the internet with some quotable lines. I'd like to share those as well today. Elaine, would you read those?
Sure. If your eyes are positive, you will love the world. But if your tongue is positive, the world will love you. A woman's love is in action. She looks with her heart and feels with her eyes. A woman is the bank where her family deposits all anger, worries, and hurt. A woman is a cement that keeps her family together.
That's a beautiful prayer, too. I would like to share some more of this, and next show I think I will. John O'Donohue came from Ireland, settled here, and actually died very young at age 53, unexpectedly. Today, we're going to go back and finish some poetry and some focus, which we left off on show number 4, Cuba and the Dominican Republic. And we're going to start with a couple of poems about Cuba and by a very famous Cuban poet, who I'll get to in a minute, but this is Alberto Padilla. I have always lived in Cuba. I live in Cuba. I've always lived in Cuba. Those years of roaming the world, of which much has been said, are my lies, my falsehoods, as I have always been in Cuba. And it is true that there were days of the revolution when the island could blow apart in the waves, but in the airports, in the places where I traveled, I felt that they screamed at me by name. And responding, I was on this shore, sweating, walking in shirt sleeves, drunk on wind and greenery when sun and sea bathe the terraces and sing their Alleluia. I wish I had the Spanish, so that you could read. I don't today. I'd like to leave that with you. It's so
Thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you so much.
You too.
Thank you.
The poet I'd like to focus on is a guy by the name of Richard Blanco. And I'll read a little intro from The Guardian, which is a British rag. Gay Cuban-American poet to recite at Obama's inauguration. Richard Blanco will become the first ever Hispanic or homosexual person to read at a president's swearing in. The award-winning Cuban-American gay poet Richard Blanco is set to become the first ever Hispanic or homosexual person to recite a poem at the U.S. president's swearing-in ceremony. Blanco, 44, will also become the youngest ever inaugural poet when he recites a poem his own composition on 21 January. President Barack Obama, who helped choose Blanco as his inaugural poet, said he was, quote, honored, end quote, that the author would be joining him and his vice president, Joe Biden, at their second swearing-in ceremony. He's got some mellow musical poems, Jim, that almost are songs. I'd like you to think about, as by way of a setup, an intro for him, I'd like you to think about contrasts, because the 2 or 3 poems that I'm going to read show the contrast emotionally of his life. Okay, born in Spain, his parents had just escaped Cuba during the revolution. And at 2 months of age in Spain, his parents brought him to Miami. They resettled in Miami. So all the themes and topics from his poems seem to contrast city and country, Spanish-speaking countries, Native American, English-speaking countries. And he's talking about Maine and Florida often, as you'll hear. So he's looking for home. And I think the emotional drive is the deepest thing within him, in his soul. I'm Cuban, but I'm born to Cuban parents in Spain. When I was 2 months old, they uprooted me and brought me back to Miami. And then we moved to New York City. And then I found a boyfriend and I moved to Maine. But my heart is looking for the Gulf Motel. I want to go back to Cuba. I want to go back home. So listen to that for a moment. See if you hear it. My father, my hands. My father gave me these hands, fingers inch wide and muscular like his, the same folds of skin like squinted eyes looking back at me whenever I wash my hands in the kitchen sink and remember him washing garden dirt off his, or helping my mother dry the dishes every night. These are his fingernails, flat, 10 small mirrors I look into and see him signing my report card or mixing batter for our pancakes on Sunday mornings. His same whorls of hair near my wrists, magnetic lines that pull me back to him, tying my shoelaces, pointing at words as I learned to read, and years later, greasy hands teaching me to change the oil in my car, immaculate hands showing me how to tie my necktie. These are his knuckles rising, falling like hills between my veins. So, looking for home, but looking for continued connection with parents, grandparents. Very moving. This is his signature poem, I think, from this book. There's no poem looking for the Gulf Motel. Usually poets have a signature poem. I think this is the one. thicker than country. This is my favorite in the whole book. A Cuban like me living in Maine? Well, what the hell? Mark loves his native snow, and I don't mind it, really. I love icicles, even though I still decorate the house with seashells and starfish. Sometimes I want to raise chickens and pigs. Wonder if I could grow even a small mango tree in my 3-season porch. But mostly, I'm happy with hemlocks and birches towering over the house. Their shadows like sundials, the cool breeze blowing even in the summer. A juniper tree. How cool. Sometimes I miss the melody of Spanish a little, and I play Celia Cruz, dance alone in the basement. Sometimes I miss the taste of white rice with picadillo. Picadillo. I got to get the tongue right. So I cook, but it's never as good as my mother's. Remember? A little of this, a little of that. That was 2 shows ago. Oh, that's so cool. I don't miss her or the smell of her Cuban bread as much as I should. Most days I wonder why, but when Mark comes home like an astronaut dressed in his ski clothes, or I spy him planting petunias in the spring, his face smudged with this earth, or barbecuing in the summer when he asks me if I want a hamburg or a cheeseburg, as he calls them, still making me laugh after 12 years. I understand why the mountains here are enough. White with snow or green with palms. Mountains are mountains, but love is thicker than any country. Or I would add, any language, any religion, any ethnic culture. Love is what we share. Love of family. On cue, buddy. Why did you buy that shirt?
Because I believe in that.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Coexist.
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 Doesn't really matter who we are, where we're from, what we do, what language we speak, what faith we believe in or don't. We're just humans. We're here on this little blue dot.
On this
floating out in
little blue
space.
dot, sharing love. Coexist. It's a beautiful work of art, too, because I see the Star of David.
Yep.
I see an E with an arrow through it. I like that.
I'm not sure what that one is.
I see next to it the peace sign, which was my favorite because I'm kind of a 60s kid, but I also miss the 60s in a lot of ways. I think Muhammad in the first.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
And I like the yin
yin
yang
yang
next to the cross.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim, for wearing that.
It's just what was on top of the pile.
Don't you believe it, though? We're also celebrating the synchronicity of sweetness and light today. So I'd like to introduce my guests a little more. Elaine teaches high school. Where's
Middle school.
Middle school.
7th graders. Yeah,
Oh,
so
you're a heroine. And she brought Fred with her, who's on camera number 1. And he knows Chaucer's prologue. On camera number 2 is my grandson, Nathan McWilliams from Racine, Ohio. Sarah's on camera 3. Thanks, Sarah. Christine is in helping with audio. And our super director, Christopher Morgan, keeps all the wires straight. Thanks for being here, guys. It's really important to get the help. Yeah. So, let's continue on the journey of poetry and faith and see where that leads us. Also, let's go back to the Dominican Republic. where we were and read a couple of stanzas. And I'd like Elaine to set up who we were reading. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So we're reading Julia Alvarez, and Julia Alvarez is from La República Dominicana, the Dominican Republic, and she is one of my inspirations. I've learned so much from her. My mother's from Dominican Republic, and I didn't grow up there. The first time I was actually there was to bury my grandmother, which was a very tough experience for me. It was a culture clash, but I just fell in love with the Dominican Republic, with the people, and as I got older and as I majored in Spanish, I discovered Julia Alvarez in her novel En el tiempo de las mariposas, which means in the time of butterflies. And she wrote about a historical event, the Mirabal sisters, Las Hermanas Mirabal, and they were strong women. They were women that challenged a dictator, Trujillo. He was pretty much ruling from the 1930s to the 1960s. So,
Wow, that's a real span.
yeah, and they were brutally murdered.
Yeah.
And because of their death, we have the elimination of violence against women, November 25th. So those women, for me, mean a lot. And Julia Alvarez told their story through the novel, and that's important. The memory and how do you remember, and the Mirabal sisters are extremely important for me. So I'll be reading part of Julia Alvarez, The Other Side, El Otro Lado, and it's about her return to the Dominican Republic after a certain time. So I drove up in Mommy's Mercedes. The uniformed guard waved me in before I could explain the car was only on loan for a week. I didn't know how to work the alarm or turn on the high beams. He was trained to admit white women riding in silver chariots. As the weeks went by and I darkened, hiking midday in the sun, refusing lifts from tropical tours or from rummy businessmen, stopping their canopied golf carts to ask where I was from. And hey, was it hot enough for me? As the weeks went by, the guards began checking my car to make sure I belonged.
There were 5 of us all together for this winter's residency. One, a Parisian, working with large canvases and no patience with the colony's handyman, who didn't know how to stretch them. Another, a globe-trotting German, who arrived fully equipped with her young lover and vegetable juicer, who drew automatically, a Ouija board sort of thing, her hand directed to sketch primordial ancestor figures squatting in mystical flames. And third, a punky New Yorker, her hair a halo of spikes, sculpting men becoming angels on the other way around. The fourth, a Seattle printmaker who settled us all down with talismans to warn off the demons we had brought with us. And finally, the fifth wheel. How would they describe me, the so-called writer working on her 2-year writing block?
Those few weeks were torture. All day I sat at the desk facing the blank wall like a child enduring her punishment. Then I moved the desk to the window for a front row view of Eden, a garden path trailing down to the bowl of a Greek amphitheater. Concert nights I could sit for free, listening on my balcony to Julio Iglesias singing his Hispanic yuppie boleros. In the mornings, the bells announced daily mass at the piazza in the chapel that contains the relics of Saint Stanislaus, the Pope's idea of a gift, the remains of a Polish saint. Once I knelt at his niche and asked him to work his magic.
We are going to take a break, short one, and we're going to come back to the same poem, La Otro Lado.
El otro lado.
El Otro Lado. And then we're going to ask Elaine to read some of her original poems, which was such a hit for show number 4. So, relax, go to the fridge, get a beer, come back, kiss the dog, and we'll be back in 3. Thank you so much. Look forward to your coming back.
Bento in 2010 from a shelter. As it turns out, we have very similar personalities. And this cat makes me make art because he's always motivating me to take pictures of him, to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. It's just that simple. Well, he's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
calls me googly eyes.
You know you're beautiful, right? You know that?
Even you are beautiful. I got bullied for wearing glasses. Share if you're against bullying.
We put it out there, just took off. 3 million people have shared this post. Don't let bullies get you down. I stand with you. Our whole family's wearing glasses. I wear glasses and I'm proud.
I even have the army on my team.
All the kind comments brought my child joy. I don't feel thank you is enough.
Next.
And I can't change, even if I try, even if I wanted to. My love, my love, my love, she keeps me warm. 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 She keeps me warm.
We are neighbors and best friends.
I love my sister.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.
Our family is no less than any other family.
Love is kind. Love is patient.
I know how to get there. Trust me. I mean, hello. Everybody knows the way. See, we're here. Like, it took, what, 10 minutes? Oh.
Ma'am, are you okay?
Yeah.
Need to let go of a few things? Drop them off at Goodwill. We're on your way to just about anywhere.
Welcome back. Poetry of Immigrants. We've added a guest, my grandson, Nathan McWilliams from Racine, Ohio, who was on camera number 2, and he wants to get on camera now. Welcome, Nathan. And I want to introduce the second half of the show by saying, first of all, that we got a sweet review on the email from show number 5. Wow. Thanks for introducing music, he said. So show 5 was the music. We avoid making poetry a fun thing in this culture, the Anglo-Saxon American culture. The old Anglo-Saxon land grabbers and robber earls did it better. Get everyone stuffed with roast mutton and beer, then bring in the bard, that's poet, to declaim harp chords. So, what's the relationship with the Hispanic culture? It's a celebration. Okay, so I'm going to ask Elaine to finish up with Julia, and then we'll go directly to her poetry. So if you could read that whole thing yourself.
Sure.
Thanks.
Down that mountain, Mike and I hiked, calling out to each other. You all right, mate? Like two Brits trekking down darkest Africa, a movie scene we make up, confused as to how to behave. We're not really the sunscreen tourists, pleasure colonists with charge cards, not quite the Dominican rich phoning from our Mercedes to alert the dozing watchman to get our weekend villa ready. Make sure the orchids are blooming, the beach sky producing sunshine. Mike and I hiked down that mountain, stone out of our minds, on a joint he snuck in through customs. I warned him not to bring me in my homeland fishbowl. Pedigree third world, uncles in high places. Religious childhood aunts swore to save me during this visit. American lost sheep knees. All she needs, it's 20 pounds. Un esposo, and of course, Jesus, under which triple prescription. So that's Julia Alvarez.
So, what an interesting reintroduction to her own culture she had after 10 years absence. I love the narrative dialogue and the free conversational quality of that poetry. Is yours at all like hers in the conversational style, or is it more composed and formal?
It depends on the poem. And I do have a lot of storytelling. I do make a lot of cultural references because that's so important.
It is.
But I definitely relate to her storytelling and her use of language, and also the idea of home belonging and not belonging. How do you reconcile those two things? And even in the previous poem that you talked about, there was a little bit of guilt there with like, I don't really miss, I think, what was it, the bread as much?
Yeah,
so,
little guilt.
Yeah, so you have that guilt and also you're missing, and it's an interesting thing when it comes to identity and the process of identity, how you recognize yourself.
Like, who the hell am I?
Yeah.
Blanco's asking, you know?
Yeah.
Am I American? Am I Cuban? Am I Spanish?
And that's very common in Hispanic literature. You would see that question of identity a lot, which it's not really a surprise because many of the Hispanic countries have been through so much exploitation and conquest and a lot of interruptions, political interruptions. So, but yeah, so I would say it depends on the poem. The one that I'm reading,
Good.
Equation, it's about women because I think I love strong women. My grandmother, the Mirabal sisters, Julia Alvarez.
I remember your grandmother.
Oh my God, I love her
from the
so
show
much.
number 4.
Yes.
And that brought us all to tears because you were saying goodbye.
Yeah.
But she was also teaching you to cook with a little pinch of this and a little pinch of that. The strength of the women in the culture.
Yeah. And this has, of course, the mentioning of food, which I love food, and we talked about previously. So you'll see some Goya stuff in here, and it's pretty short, so.
Oh yeah, poya. Yeah.
So this is equation. Reduced to a can of Goya beans on the side, a dash of adobo for flavor because too much would simply spoil it. Simplified to a coqueta with salsa swaying hips by those with superficial understanding who can't hear her stories nor the song in her elongated, mispronounced words. A Goya bean eating dancing coqueta, perhaps, but she can turn 2 cups of rice into 4. Give an embrace that binds wounds with silk threads, while she carries open ones, struggling alone to pay for college with the money earned from her 2 jobs.
Wow.
So that's Equation. And for me, of course, it's just to pretty much uplift the woman, the strong woman who work hard. And honor
what she did as sacrifice. We talked about that a lot the 4th show. I really appreciated that. The love of mother and grandmother sacrificing. Wow. That really touches a chord. That's so representative too of culture. What else do you have that you'd love to share?
This one's completely different. It is storytelling, and there was a phrase my father used to always say to us when we got sad or when we stressed things that were, according to him, too little. Like, oh, that's not significant enough for you to be nervous and stressed about and crying. Why are you crying for? So he would tell us, no te ahogues en un vaso de agua. And that was, don't drown in a glass of water. Why are you drowning in a glass of water? So I wrote this, I think it was like 1 year or 2 years ago, when I discovered that Puerto Rico is going through economic crisis. They're in debt. And that broke my heart because I'm not there. And it's like, how can I help, Puerto Rico,
Big time.
So this was my feeling on what was going on.
I love the way you make the distinction, though, between narrative poetry, telling a story, and the lyric from Lyre, celebrating the heart song. It's a different kind of poetry, isn't it? I mean, you can really shift from telling a story into the emotional state of a lyric poem. So this one is more lyrical or more narrative?
I think it's more narrative. Okay. I think it just expresses what I felt when I found out how the crisis that Puerto Rico is going through and how desperate I was, using that phrase that my father would always say to us. So, and it's very short. It's called Water for Puerto Rico.
Okay.
Dad always said, no te ahogues en un vaso de agua. It means don't drown in a glass of water. I'll explain to my non-Spanish speaking friends, wanting to share the magic. Because for some reason, when he recited such words, I was able to hold my breath longer underwater. The jellyfish stings didn't hurt so much. The seaweed's grip seemed looser. I'll emerge having chewed the algae, singing the melody of the seashells, a song no one else had heard before. My arms would extend farther. I'll catch and hold the waters, mastering the art of swimming, because there's nothing worse than drowning, until the glass shattered into pieces that formed a fractured sun, leaving behind not a single drop to satiate my thirst.
Oh, wow. Elaine, that's the best poem I've heard you read.
Really? Oh,
really? You took the figure and ran with it. Yeah.
What was that line there about the seashells?
Yeah.
I'd emerge having chewed the algae, singing the melody of the seashells, a song no one else had heard before.
That deserved repeating.
Thank you.
The melody of the seashells. And Nathan's trying to avoid all the jellyfish that are going to come in August.
Yeah, as a kid, I grew up with my grandfather, just trying to, when me and him would go to the beach, just trying to avoid these jellyfish, and I can just remember getting stung by these huge big things and thinking, man, if I get, as a little kid, I was more scared of them. Man, if I get stung by one of these, I'm going to die. I mean, that's just how you think as a kid. But my grandfather was, she talked about that strength. My grandfather was strong in the sense that he would reassure me that no, you're making too big a deal out of this.
Ah, like the glass of water. Wonderful connection. Maybe you'll become a poet. Speaking of poets, I gave you some of the quotes from Shakespeare. Anyone strike your interest? These are common expressions we use every day. Speaking of the Middle Ages, Chaucer. We don't quote from Chaucer very often, but a few hundred years later, Shakespeare comes along and changes everything in the English language. And his quotes are so quotable and last 400 years. So they're with us every day. We say them, we don't know Shakespeare first coined it, right? You have one?
I do. I have a quote from Hamlet, his play on Hamlet, In My Mind's Eye. This one has a very, very short story towards it. When I was in high school, I had to learn the entire play of Hamlet. I had to take tests on it. I had to write, 4-page papers on it. And, of course, my grandfather being who he is, which is, an English professor and, just very, very active in the poetry world, I thought, well, I really should know this. And so, I just really struggled to learn Hamlet. And I just had to keep that mind's eye about things when I'm thinking about, the end goal of graduating from high school. Because that's one of my things that my grandfather has always taught me is, what is your end goal? What is your end success? Where do you see yourself, in 5 years? So trying to keep that in your mind's eye, so to speak.
Thanks, Nathan. But there's another quote that might have struck you. Any other quotes?
Let's see. There's The Wild Goose Chase by Romeo and Juliet.
Good. We're all on that.
Yes.
Thank you. That was really good. I love the way you connect the dots, too. Anything spark, Jim, in terms of family history?
In terms of a song?
Yeah.
Music? Yeah. That the song I opened the show with is called Juniper Knoll, and it talks about a cottage that my grandfather built, and he came over from England, and my grandmother came over from England. They didn't meet till they were here, but they got together, moved to New Haven, and started raising a family. Now they used to go hang out in, anybody familiar with the shoreline here might have heard of Leeds Island in Guilford. And it used to be a picnic ground there, so they'd go hang out at the picnic ground and have a good old time, and they decided to build a cottage there. So he built this cottage in 1928, and unfortunately for him, he didn't have a long time to enjoy it. He died in 1931, but my grandmother managed through the Depression to keep the cottage alone. She never, in fact, there's a cute story about someone saying, oh, once he had died, they said, oh, you're young, you'll recover, you'll meet someone new. And she said, nope, I don't think so. He was a catch. That's a quote. He was a catch. So to my knowledge, she never, ever even dated another guy, and the rest of her, another, I guess, about 60 more years.
Wow.
Or 50, I don't know how long. I can't add.
Her whole life?
Yeah.
Wow.
But would you like me to put another song in the mix here?
I'd love it, because the lyrical quality of that first mellow intro song is still with me. It's so moving to hear the mellowness with the heartfelt feelings.
He's the guy I write for, right? That's it. That's the audience I'm looking for. We need 10,000 more of him.
The first chord got me. Yeah.
This song is called Wood, Nails, and Love, and it starts about him building that cottage, but then it continues through my grandmother and my parents meeting, and I'm one of 9 kids, so all of us kids being, getting into the mix, and then me meeting my wife and our kids eventually, and then we built a home for them to live in. So the song is called Wood, Nails, and Love. In 28, he built a cabin. In 31, he died. When after 60 years we sold it, well, something in us cried, 'cause it was more than just wood and nails, more than shelter from the gales that blew in from the sea. It was a little piece of heaven and a sweet, sweet memory. Well, he moved up the street from her, and by they wed. They just couldn't stop having kids, and we're sure glad they did, 'cause we were more than just a family, a bunch of kids on their knees in our suburban home. We had a little piece of heaven and a place to call our own. Well, they said Grandpa was crazy to build that tiny shack. Said Mom and Dad were crazier yet, with all those kids on their back. And I say that's the kind of crazy we sure can use more of, 'cause they made something beautiful out of wood, nails, and love. When I saw her and she saw me across that smoky bar, it didn't take us all that long. We couldn't be apart. We were more than just lovers. Our world above the covers, our embrace a fortress strong. We had a little piece of heaven we never were alone. Well, the kids just kept on coming, and how our dreams did grow. We just sold the house, bought a plot of land where the iron stream flowed. We used more than just wood and nails, a reckless faith that could not fail. Our blood, sweat, and hope. We built a little piece of heaven, and we brought our family home. Well, they said we were crazy, having all those kids. Said we were even crazier to build that house out in the woods. I say that's the kind of crazy we sure can use more of, 'cause we built something beautiful out of wood, nails, and love. So go make something beautiful.
So pretty.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
That's so heart-moving, just to the core. I think you've got it. I've never heard.
I was fortunate to have 4 of my sisters come to see me play at a place I played this past week, and
Wow.
they actually requested that song, and I knew I was going to think about playing it when I was scheduled, to play for this, but I hadn't played it in a long time.
Oh.
So I said, well, I guess I better pull it out, and I did, and it was great to have the 4 of them there, part of the brood.
Feeling it.
Yeah,
With you.
singing along with it because they know it.
They know it.
It's very gratifying to be sitting there, no matter who it is, singing along with your own song. So, yeah,
Oh, isn't
it's
it?
pretty cool.
Yeah. No.
Other musicians in the family?
I have a brother who is a very, very accomplished pianist. He doesn't do a lot with it these days. He does have a grand piano in his home that I think they've had to dismantle and put it back together to be there. But he comes and goes from it, and once in a great while we'll get to go see a recital of his. But he's exceptional. And it's pretty much it. A couple other people noodle around with a guitar or sing or something, but mostly.
How old were you when you picked up a guitar for the first time?
That was going to be my question.
I was 13 when I convinced my dad to buy me a bass guitar, and I was a kid who picked up something and ran over there and picked up something else and put that one down and said, so they all thought that this was going to be it. They were going to waste this money on a bass guitar for me, and guess what? Here I am, 40-something years later. I've evolved a little bit, but I've been playing my whole life pretty much, yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful to hear.
I didn't start writing until I wrote Juniper Knoll after we sang that song, after we sold the cottage. And I had a friend of mine record it, and I played it at a family reunion, and everybody was like, huh?
Who's this guy?
That? Right. And it kind of was very inspiring for me to continue writing. And I've got a bunch of CDs out now, and in fact, that last song is on my last CD release. So.
Wow. I'm your first in line. I gotta have it. Gotta have it.
I'll get you one.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
I just don't know when I've been so moved by songs of family and love.
They're not all songs of family and love. There's a lot of, guy meets girl, guy hates girl hates guy, breakup, all that stuff too,
Really?
Plenty of that.
And any humor songs?
No, I try to write humor. I just don't think I'm very good
Okay.
at it.
That's not your oeuvre,
Yeah,
as
not my
they
thing.
say.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm a hooked fan. Family love. Any more of mother, grandmother, women, sisters? Do you have sisters?
Oh, do I have sisters?
Do I have sisters?
Yes, I have.
How
Oh my
many you got?
goodness, I have 5.
Me too.
Yeah, we're all together. We're like 7. Yeah, so we're a lot. Yeah.
5 sisters? 5
Wait,
sisters?
Debbie, Christine, Flor, Anais. Yes.
You gotta remember their names and count them.
My father, when he talks to us, he calls me every name but mine. And then finally he gets into okay, Lane. So yeah, it's tough. And then I have a lot of nieces and nephews, so I lose count. It's just too much. I love it though.
You love it, yeah. I can see why. Yeah.
There's nothing quite like a big family. I have 4 kids, and that seemed like a lot to people then, but I'm like, I'm from a family of 9. My wife was from a family of 9. 4 kids is nothing. This is just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, it's just, but.
Wow, so we've got 4 minutes, and I'd love to hear another poem.
Sure, I just have to.
However, and meanwhile, Nathan's going to fill in with another quote.
Another quote.
Anyone, pick it at random. That's the synchronicity of it.
I'm just going to say, The Heart of Gold.
And what play is that from?
That play is from Henry.
Henry what?
I think it says Henry VIII. I'm not for sure. Not for sure about this.
Okay, and what's the quote on top, or did you read that one yet?
I read the quote on the very top, the wild goose chase.
Thank you. Thanks, Nathan, for filling in. Now we've got 3 minutes. We're going to go.
Okay.
And then we're going to go to a song. Yeah! To finish the show. Wow.
So you wanted one like a family. This is not sister. This is for my grandma, so I had to find it. But
she's first. Grandma's first.
So this is Arieto. Arieto is like a dance that the indigenous used to do. So it's pretty much making a comparison with my aunt and the cacica, which is the lead chief, indigenous chief.
A dance?
Yeah, Arieto is a dance. Yeah.
Did you hear what just exploded from Puerto Rico on the new dance craze? It had 4 billion.
Despacito?
Yeah.
Despacito, yeah.
Is that any good?
Well, I like other, songs, but it's a dance music, I like more Celia Cruz, who you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah.
From Cuba. I like Celia Cruz, yeah.
4 billion hits on the internet?
Oh, I know,
Come on.
my students love it.
Do they?
Like Despacito, And I'm like, it's too mature to talk about with them, so I don't. I was like, okay, let's move on.
Gotcha.
So this is Arieto, and it comes in the form of a call and response. So, to the cacica with words of stone, fighting savagery and defilement, strike with your battered hands, your empty hands, carrying the powers to multiply yuca and yams. Iwayo wakina sagwe. To the cacica with the eyes of a dragonfly, who saw one of her own get ingested by beast, mimicking a convivial spirit, yanking half her heart, eating it raw with their inflated, deformed fingers. Iwana sari. To the one with dreams of papaya and mamey, taken in the middle of the night when dogs barked and salivated. Your toil intertwined with the roots of palm trees, like hands making braids, linking each piece, reminding us we're almost there. Nakum.
Wow. Yeah.
Thank you.
I love it.
Are you composing actively? Do you write poems every week or every month?
I try to write every day. Right now I'm working on a poetry book and a novel. So.
Wow.
A novel?
A novel.
So you have the influence of Julia up there somewhere working. Yeah, because we all have mentors. Last question.
Yeah.
Who was your mentor? Who was does Leonard Cohen ring a bell?
Yeah, he does ring a bell. That was not my mentor. My mentor, I would have to say, would have been Dan Fogelberg, because he does do some songs about all this stuff as well. And I guess I'm probably not going to have time for another song, but I'll just start it and maybe fade out over it or something. This is a song I wrote for my kids, but back to the family, poetry, everything. This could easily be interpreted as a prayer. It's called "I Will Be With You."
Thank you. Love to hear it.
When the sparks fly up around you and the world just fills you up, and the morning breeze
Set your soul at ease in the arms of the one you love. I will be with you to celebrate your joy. I'll be with you, always with you. When the flames of love should burn you, and the heat become too much to bear, and the restful waters just boil and vanish in the air, well, I will be with you to offer you my hand. I'll be with you, always with you. When the fire subsides, smoke fills your eyes, you're blinded with no hope in sight, I will be there, just holding your hand and guiding each step through the night. And while sifting through the ashes of what you once loved so well, you might find in the dark the tiniest spark. Well, who knows? Who can say? Who can tell?